Once you're kind of turned on to lyric essays, you see possibilities for them everywhere.
My guest today is Randon Billings Noble, whose latest project, A HARP in the Stars, is an anthology of lyric essays that was recently released.
In my experience, and in many others, lyric essays are really difficult to define. I wanted to try to get a grip on them by thinking about them in terms of form, because I thought that was a clearly visible way to think about lyric essays. So I collected essays in 4 different kinds of forms: flash essays, segmented essays, braided essays, and hermit crab essays. And then also a few craft essays at the end. So lyric essays about lyric essays. Because lyric essays are so slippery to define, all of the contributors wrote a short meditation talking about what the lyric essay is for them, how their particular lyric essay came to be, any thoughts that they have about this sort of unusual and intriguing form.
One thing that stands out to outsiders, or sometimes I'll get like a person who's never taken creative nonfiction in one of my workshops, and they want to know the like lingo or vocabulary. The frustrating thing is that I don't know if it's just that we're just still figuring it out, or that it's always going to defy definition, but this idea of like, what is a lyric essay? It seems like it should be pretty simple to define, but it's not easy. So have you come up with a working definition of a lyric essay?
I have.
I want to hear it.
I came to define a lyric essay as a piece of writing with a visible, standout, or unusual structure that explores, forecasts, or gestures to an idea in an unexpected way.
I like the explores, forecasts, or gestures to, because I don't know how to define the lyric essay. I couldn't have done what you just did. But I do know that it moves, that it's not a static report. That's the thing that can be really exciting. When you came up with those 4 categories, how easy or difficult was it to put the contributors' pieces into those? Because a lot of pieces are segmented hermit crab essays that are also lyric essays.
I asked the contributors to label what form their submission was. And I had some people change their minds, actually. An essay that was submitted as a segmented essay that later she said, actually, I think this is really a braided essay. Really wanted all of the contributors to have creative control of their own work and not to have me diagnose it as something that they didn't necessarily agree with.
Yeah, that's so smart. And as people are listening, what you get is that even though this is an exciting form, sort of the best way to know what it is to get this anthology and read this collection, because it is really tough to pin down. Tell me the title of your heart essay, which is so gorgeous.
Thank you. It's called The Heart is a Torn Muscle.
I love that essay. That is in this anthology. Where did that end up? Which category is that?
That's a hermit crab essay.
Okay.
Although it's also in segments, but I deliberately wrote it as a hermit crab essay, taking an online medical advice site like WebMD as the structure, and then filled it in with my own content.
Mm-hmm. That's where I would have put it too. Okay, I feel more confident now that I would have done that. Let's say that somebody listening to this has never even really heard of a lyric essay, or maybe they've heard it, but they don't really know what we're talking about. We don't even sometimes know. But what do you think this collection of essays, regardless of what they're called, what do they have to offer readers and writers?
One real standout are the more experimental structures. These don't really read like traditional essays. And I put that in quotes because even what is a traditional essay? There's so many different forms that an essay can take. But instead of being seamless, probably narrative driven with transitions between paragraphs, I think one exciting thing about this anthology is that the essays look different on the page and function differently. So there could be white spaces where you have to make an intuitive leap between 2 sections of an essay, or the sections could be titled. So you're being led by the author, but in a different way than with transitions that make explicit connections between ideas. That's also one of the main characteristics, I think, of a lyric essay, is that they're more intuitive than expository, that you're sensing an idea is moving through the essay instead of being led more explicitly the way a traditional essay might.
I know that as a writer, sometimes when I get stalled, I often don't know where an essay is going, but I will borrow from somebody else's form. I find that it could be really helpful to jumpstart my writing. I don't know if that happens for you, where you just don't know how you're going to write about a thing, and then you follow this pattern that seems like it might not lead anywhere, but then it does.
Absolutely. When I'm teaching lyric essays, I'll often assign a sort of forced hermit crab essay. Whatever it is that you're working on, find another form to tell or write or reveal that essay. And even if it fails as a hermit crab essay, because a lot of them do. I have a lot of unsuccessful, unpublished, unseen hermit crab essays, but just putting that content into that different form can move your thinking forward in an unexpected way. And even if you then return to a more narrative structure, that thinking is still apparent and evident in the essay. So I love that as a writing prompt, is to try to find another form, a resume, a Yelp review, a syllabus, a recipe, to put some sort of an already almost finished essay draft into that form and see what happens, see what's revealed.
Your heart is a torn muscle. Can you talk a little bit about how you wrote that piece?
I knew I wanted to have an experimental structure. I knew I wanted to write about a transgressive crush. So I thought about writing about the crush sort of as rising action, climax of sorts, and then falling action. So I thought about it in terms of a timeline. And I was fooling around with that idea. And I was away on a residency at the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, and I wanted to have a better view. So on my very first day, I think I was only there for a couple hours, I moved to this really heavy desk so I could look out a window. And as I was moving the desk, I pulled something in my back. I went to WebMD, not as a writer, but just as a person in distress. And as I was reading through the symptoms, the home care, exams and tests, all these different things, I thought, actually, this would apply for a crush as well. It says things like, don't use the muscle, apply ice, apply heat can only intensify the swelling. And I started hearing all this metaphorical advice. The form was immediately apparent to me. And then I started filling in the symptoms, what to do if home remedies don't work. And then on WebMD, it always says like further reading, and the ending almost always says like you have some fatal illness. It's never a positive thing on WebMD.
Right.
So I tried to think about ways of using that reading to point to different novels and other texts about crushes and how people got over them one way or another, and tried to end with sort of lighter prescriptive note.
A lot of the times how it works is that you have something that's actually going on in your life along with this thing that you want to write about. And what I think is so cool about lyric essay is that it often like combines those things in a really interesting way. It's like this organic marriage of like your life material and writing.
Once you're kind of turned on to lyric essays, you see possibilities for them everywhere, which is what I hope this anthology does for people, is just to first of all say, hey, this is a thing, and here's what it can look like. And then hopefully that acts as an invitation to seek them out in the world, either as readers or writers. I'm going to read two short excerpts from the introduction. Lyric essays require a kind of passion, a commitment to weirdness in the face of convention, a willingness to risk confusion, a comfort with outsider status. When I'm writing a lyric essay, I'm not worried about what it is or what to call it. But when I started teaching lyric essays, I needed to put words to the form, to try to define it, to make it at least a little more accessible and understandable, even as I kept running into contradictions of my own thinking. Sometimes I enjoyed the lyric essay's elusiveness. Other times I felt like I was following backwards hoofprints. But the lyric essay's wily capaciousness is among its strengths. I came to define a lyric essay as a piece of writing with a visible, standout, or unusual structure that explores, forecasts, gestures to an idea in an unexpected way. But about that visible, standout, unusual structure, those gestured to ideas, lyric essays are tricky. If you try to mount one to a spreading board, it's likely to dodge the pin and fly away. If you try to press one between two slides, it might find a way to ooze down your sleeve. And if you try to set it within a taxonomy, it will pose the same problems as the platypus, a mammal, but one that lays eggs, semi-aquatic, living in both water and on land, and venomous, a trait that belongs mostly to reptiles and insects. It will run away if on land, its gait that of a furry alligator, or swim off in the undulating way of beavers. Either way, it can threaten you with a poison spur before it ripples off. In this anthology, you will find a wide range of thinking about the lyric essay, how it can leap, search, wander, hint at, unravel, excavate, and create. how it can both replicate and explain trauma, how it comes from or leaves behind fiction and poetry, how it acts like a panther, an iceberg, an on-ramp, an artichoke, how it's defined and how it can never be defined, how it tries and how it delivers, how it sings and how it plays. Orpheus's lyre accompanied him through all sorts of adventures. It traveled with him as deep as the underworld, and after his death was sent by Zeus to live among the stars. You can see its constellation, Lyra, in the summer months if you live in the northern hemisphere, the winter months if you live in the southern. This feels like an apt metaphor for the lyric essay. The stars are there, but their shape is what your mind brings to them.
Thank you. Yeah, again, like when you were reading, such beautiful language, but also lots of movement in those descriptions. I love that panther and artichoke because they're both perfect and true. And the line about how the writer has to be able to sustain confusion, I think is how you said it. But basically, it's not just this really interesting package. I think the writer has to bring something, has to matter to the writer. I don't know if that's something that people talk about in their descriptions of lyric essay, but it feels like you have to be vulnerable in a way that's quite uncomfortable with these pieces.
I think that's a great way of thinking about it, to be comfortable with discomfort. And as both a writer and as readers. And all of those comparisons came from the contributors in their meditations, the on-ramp, the artichoke, the panther. So those were some images that I pulled from their comparisons. I brought this beautiful thing that is full of tea, so I'll hold it.
Oh, that's nice.
It's the crest of the Holy Cross Abbey. I got this at the monastery gift shop after I had been there for a 1 week long silent retreat. It was in the winter months, so drinking many hot beverages was part of how I got through the 3 a.m. wake up call for the first prayers of the day.
I just think of you as somebody who finds interesting places, and you have many objects associated with places. Now we're going off to different writing, but I think you could write a really great, like, not only beautiful descriptions, which you do, of the landscape and places, but you could like do a really nice guidebook to the regions where you've lived.
I love that idea. I might need to take a quick note.
Yeah. You probably are looking for things to do, right?
I think I know a few really odd ones that just sort of aligned with my sensibilities or my writerly preoccupations. I have a fascination with monastic life, and I'm sure it's an inflated and romantic view of it. But I also love the idea of silence. What would it be like to not talk for a week and not talk for a week among strangers? And then I decided I would go to all the services or all the divine offices while I was there. And so that was, there were some very early mornings to be present in their chapel at 3 a.m. But it was really a wonderful experience, both learning a little bit more about the divine offices, but also just to live in silence for a whole week.
Over the years, I've started those retreats, and then I bail because the silence is so heavy or deep, or it's important, but it's tough. It's like the lyric essay, actually. I think it requires this comfort with discomfort.
From Lynda Barry's book, SYLLABUS. And it's just a basic, she calls it the basic quick diary format. And it only takes 5 minutes a day, ideally. And you just list, as you can see, what you did, what you saw, something you heard someone say. I always say something overheard, and then to draw a picture from your day. You can find this in her book, SYLLABUS, which I had here just in case. It gets you in the habit of paying attention. If you do this exercise at the end of the day and you think like, I didn't overhear anything, or I can't remember, like, did I see anything interesting? I don't know. There was just that one boot in the alleyway. Does that count? When I start doing this regularly, I sort of keep a little eye out for things that I've seen, things that I've overheard. So it helps me pay more attention. And then that attention can lead to lots of interesting writerly things.
Check out the links below to order a copy of Randon's new anthology and to learn more about her other writing and work. Before you navigate away, take a second, hit subscribe, and hit that little bell so you're notified when new author interviews are posted. I appreciate your support as I continue to grow this channel.